It was supposed to be just another car for ordinary Americans. Cheap, simple, and nothing worth remembering. At least, that's what Ford wanted you to believe in 1960. But behind the plain looks of the Falcon was a story that changed the entire direction of the auto industry. A car born out of panic, secretly tied to the Mustang, quietly shaping racing history, and even leaving its fingerprints on Hollywood blockbusters and global politics. This was the car that nobody expected to matter, yet it became the backbone of Ford's future. Today, we're uncovering the hidden story of the Ford Falcon. And trust me, it's a lot wilder than you've ever been told. 1. Falcon's secret birth. By the late 1950s, Ford was in trouble. Small, fuel-efficient imports from Europe and Japan were flooding American streets, while Chevrolet launched the radical rear-engine Corvair. Ford, on the other hand, had nothing to compete with. Executives were panicking. Behind closed doors in Dearborn, heated debates broke out. Some insiders argued that Americans would never embrace tiny cars. Others warned that if Ford didn't act fast, they'd lose an entire generation of buyers. The solution was rushed into existence: the Ford Falcon. On the surface, it was the picture of simplicity: front engine, rear-wheel drive, easy to fix, and priced for middle-class families. Nothing fancy, no risky experiments like Chevrolet's Corvair. But here's where the story gets interesting. Internal memos later revealed that Ford executives deliberately downplayed the Falcon's design. They worried it looked too basic, almost cheap. Yet that gamble worked. When the Falcon hit showrooms in 1960, buyers didn't care about flashy engineering. They cared about reliability, price, and ease of ownership. Ford's plain little car outsold everyone's expectations, moving more than 435,000 units in its very first year. Suddenly, the compact car wasn't just a passing trend. It was a revolution. And what came next would prove just how important this emergency car really was, because without the Falcon, one of the most legendary names in American muscle might never have existed. 2. Mustang's hidden father. When Ford unveiled the Mustang in 1964, it looked like something completely new, sleek, sporty, and unlike anything America had seen before. Buyers rushed to dealerships, and the Mustang became an instant sensation. But here's the truth most people never knew: under that fresh body was the skeleton of a Falcon. That's right. The Mustang didn't start with a blank sheet of paper. Ford engineers quietly borrowed the Falcon's chassis, suspension, and even drivetrain parts. Why? Because speed was everything, not on the racetrack, but in the boardroom. Ford needed the Mustang on the market fast, before competitors could respond, and building it from the Falcon saved both time and millions of dollars. But here's the twist: Ford worked hard to keep this connection under wraps. Executives worried that if the public found out the sexy Mustang was built on the bones of an everyday Falcon, the magic would wear off. So they kept it quiet. To buyers, it was all flash and excitement. But to insiders, it was Falcon DNA holding the Mustang together. And that gamble paid off. The Mustang became a global icon, but it was the Falcon that made it possible. So the next time you hear about the Mustang's legendary birth, remember, it wasn't born in a vacuum. It was born from a humble little compact car. But the Falcon's story didn't stop in the engineering department. It had another life, one far more glamorous, under the bright lights of Hollywood. And its starring role might surprise you. 3. Hollywood and pop culture. Most people think of the Ford Falcon as a sensible family car, not a movie star. But look closely, and you'll see it quietly parked in the background of American cinema, almost like an extra who stole scenes without ever speaking a word. Take Bullitt, 1968, the Steve McQueen classic famous for its high-speed Mustang chase through San Francisco. Everyone remembers the green Mustang and the black Dodge Charger trading blows on the hills, but freeze-frame the footage, and Falcons are everywhere. Parked on corners, mixed into traffic, blending into the raw streets of the city. The Falcon was part of the landscape, so common in everyday life that it became the uncredited backbone of the film's realism. But the Falcon's real breakout moment didn't happen in America. It happened nearly a decade later on the other side of the world, in Australia. In 1979, a gritty low-budget film called Mad Max introduced audiences to a dystopian future where the last great symbol of freedom was a roaring black muscle car. That car, known as the Pursuit Special, was built from an Australian Ford Falcon XB GT coupe. Overnight, the Falcon went from family-friendly runabout to cult cinema icon. Its aggressive design burned into movie history. From suburban streets to post-apocalyptic wastelands, the Falcon proved it could play any role. But here's the thing, its Hollywood fame wasn't just about looks. Beneath that ordinary exterior, Some Falcons had serious muscle. And when those cars hit the streets, they shocked everyone who thought the Falcon was nothing but a mild-mannered commuter. 4. Sleeper street machine. On the surface, the Ford Falcon was marketed as a family car, cheap, light, and practical. But if you looked a little closer, some versions were hiding a completely different personality. By the mid-1960s, Ford realized young drivers wanted more than just economy. They wanted speed. So, engineers began slipping powerful V8s under the Falcon's hood. Suddenly, this mild-mannered commuter car could smoke its tires and leave so-called real muscle cars staring at its taillights. Take the Falcon Sprint, for example. In 1963, it shocked the world when Ford stuffed a 260 cubic inch V8 inside. A compact car with muscle car power was practically unheard of at the time, and the Falcon Sprint became a secret weapon for gearheads who wanted performance without the flashy looks. And then came the Falcon GT in Australia, a car so fierce it rewrote what the Falcon could be. With a roaring 351 V8 and aggressive styling, it was the opposite of the economy box Americans thought they knew. In fact, it became so powerful that some models, like the GTHO Phase 3, were once considered the fastest four-door sedans in the world. This was the Falcon's ultimate trick. It could look plain, even boring, yet destroy expectations the moment the light turned green. It wasn't just a car. It was a sleeper, hiding muscle under a modest shell. But the Falcon's story wasn't just about horsepower. Its design also had a dark side, one that left thousands of drivers shocked, and sometimes in danger. 5. Design flaws and dark secrets. For all its charm and performance potential, the Falcon had skeletons in its closet, some of them downright dangerous. When it debuted in 1960, Ford rushed the Falcon to market to beat rivals like Chevy's Corvair and Plymouth's Valiant. But that speed came at a cost. Early Falcons had serious handling issues. The car was light, yes, but sometimes too light. On highways, strong crosswinds could push it around like a toy, and its suspension often struggled under real-world driving conditions. Owners complained the steering felt vague and unpredictable, making long trips a nerve-wracking experience. But the most controversial flaw? The Falcon's rear suspension design. It used a basic leaf spring setup, which kept costs down but gave the car a tendency to bounce, sway, and even lose traction in sharp corners. Some critics accused Ford of cutting corners, calling it unsafe compared to European compacts of the time. And then came the safety crisis of the 1960s. Ralph Nader's book Unsafe at Any Speed targeted the Corvair, but the Falcon didn't escape scrutiny either. Reports surfaced of cracked shock towers, weak brakes, and even structural rust problems in certain climates. Ford quietly issued fixes, but the damage to its reputation was done. Many began to see the Falcon as cheap, fragile, and disposable. Yet here's the twist. Those very flaws gave the Falcon an underground legacy. Street racers and hot rodders realized the Falcon's light body was perfect for modification. With upgraded suspension and brakes, it could suddenly transform from unsafe economy car into a lightning fast-track weapon. So, while critics wrote it off as a flawed family car, gearheads saw it as the perfect blank canvas. And in racing, the Falcon would go on to silence its doubters in spectacular fashion. 6. Racing legacy. If the early Falcon was criticized for being flimsy, what happened next shocked everyone. It became a racing legend. In the United States, the Falcon Sprint became Ford's secret weapon in endurance racing. In 1964, Falcons entered the legendary Monte Carlo Rally. Nobody expected a humble American compact to stand a chance against European sports cars. Yet the Falcon Sprint, tuned for performance, powered through icy mountain roads and grueling conditions, earning respect from drivers and fans alike. But it was Australia where the Falcon truly cemented its legend. Ford Australia turned the Falcon into a beast, creating the Falcon GT. By the late 1960s, the GT and GTHO versions were tearing up Mount Panorama at Bathurst, the toughest racetrack in the Southern Hemisphere. The 1971 Falcon GTHO Phase 3 was the peak of this evolution. Packing a 351 Cleveland V8, it wasn't just fast, it was terrifyingly fast. Journalists at the time called it the world's fastest four-door sedan. And on the track, it dominated so thoroughly that it sparked a government panic over supercars being sold to the public. Even drag racers fell in love with the Falcon. Its light body made it perfect for stuffing in massive engines, and suddenly, what was once a budget-friendly commuter was winning trophies at quarter-mile strips across America. The Falcon's unlikely success in racing gave it something money couldn't buy: street cred. It wasn't just a throwaway compact anymore, it was a car that had beaten the odds and embarrassed far more expensive machines. But while racing gave the Falcon glory, sales numbers told a different story. And that's where the next chapter takes a darker turn. 7. Sales struggles and decline. Despite its surprising success on racetracks and rally stages, the Falcon struggled to hold its ground in the showroom. By the mid-1960s, America's car culture had shifted. Buyers didn't want bare-bones economy cars anymore. They wanted flash, muscle, and luxury. And Ford itself was to blame for the Falcon's decline. In 1964, the company introduced the Mustang, built on the Falcon's very bones. The Mustang stole the spotlight instantly. With sleek styling, affordable pricing, and endless customization options, it became a cultural phenomenon. Customers who once would have bought a Falcon now walked straight past it to the Mustang. Sales of the Falcon plummeted. Ford tried to keep it alive with facelifts and more powerful versions, but it was too late. The Falcon had been overshadowed by its own sibling, a victim of Ford's marketing brilliance. By the early 1970s, the Falcon was quietly repositioned as a fleet car, marketed more toward taxi companies and budget buyers than everyday families. Its once bold image had turned into something practical, almost boring. Meanwhile, in Australia, the Falcon's story was different. It was still a hero on the roads and racetracks. But even there, the oil crisis of the 1970s and changing tastes eventually pushed Ford to tone down its raw performance models. By the time the US Falcon bowed out in 1970, few noticed. What started as Ford's economy savior and racing underdog had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. But here's the twist: while the Falcon faded, its DNA lived on in some of the most iconic cars ever built. 8. Legacy and hidden influence. Even though the Falcon eventually disappeared from Ford's US lineup, its influence never really died. In fact, some of the most legendary cars of all time wouldn't exist without it. Take the Ford Mustang, for example. Beneath the glamorous styling, the very first Mustang was built on a Falcon chassis. Ford used the Falcon's underpinnings to keep costs low, making the Mustang affordable for young buyers. Without the Falcon's bones, the pony car revolution might never have happened. The Falcon also laid the groundwork for the Ford Torino and even inspired compact performance culture in both America and Australia. In the US, drag racers loved the Falcon's light body, and hot rodders saw it as the perfect blank canvas. In Australia, the Falcon became a true national icon, evolving into powerful V8 machines that defined muscle car culture down under. Its DNA lived on in ways most people never realized. Even today, when collectors uncover rare Falcon Sprints or Australian Falcon GTS, they are reminded of how this humble car punched way above its weight. The Falcon's story is almost poetic. It started as an economy car for families, was mocked for being weak, rose to racing glory, and then slipped into obscurity, only for its spirit to live on in legends like the Mustang and Bathurst-winning GTS. It may not be the first name people think of when talking about classic Fords, but the Falcon was the hidden engine behind some of Ford's biggest successes. And that's why, more than 60 years later, the Falcon isn't just a forgotten compact, it's a cornerstone of Ford's legacy. The Ford Falcon story is a reminder that sometimes the most influential machines aren't the ones plastered on posters or worshipped in pop culture. The Falcon was born as a budget commuter, dismissed as plain and ordinary. Yet, it secretly shaped the cars that defined an entire generation: the Mustang, the Torino, and Australia's greatest muscle icons. It was the car that proved you don't have to be flashy to change the game. The Falcon didn't just serve families. It fueled racing victories, inspired engineers, and left behind a legacy that still echoes today. So the next time you see a humble old Falcon tucked away in a barn or rolling down the street, remember, you're not looking at just another compact car. You're looking at the ghost of a legend.